já už bych velmi ráda zahájila další část dnešního setkání. Před námi je tedy panelová diskuze, která je zaměřena na otázku role vedoucích pracovníků škol. Mým úkolem je jenom představit naše milé řečníky. Na prvním místě bych tedy velmi ráda představila pana Glynna Kirkhama. Pan Glynn Kirkham je v tuto chvíli vedoucí strategického rozvoje dalšího vzdělávání pedagogických pracovníků na Národním institutu dalšího vzdělávání. Jeho bohatá kariéra začala na úrovni učitele, zástupce ředitele a následně velmi dlouho pracoval ve výzkumné oblasti. Vždy se zaobíral právě tématem vedení škol. Po jeho levici, vaší pravici, sedí naše milá kolegyně z Maďarska, paní Mária Sabo. Jak jsme již zmiňovali na začátku, Maďarsko koordinovalo projekt v rámci středoevropské spolupráce zemí České republiky, Rakouska, Slovenska a právě pod vedením Maďarska. Paní Sabo opět začínající jako učitelka, ředitelka a následně se věnující výzkumné oblasti v rámci námi diskutovaného tématu. Z Nizozemí za námi přijel pan Joost den Oudsten, je z nizozemského ministerstva pro vzdělávání, kulturu a vědu. Zde je zodpovědný za rozvoj politik v oblasti rozvoje vedoucích pracovníků škol. A v neposlední řadě, abychom měli určitě i českého zástupce v této diskuzi, pak vítám pana Milana Póla, profesora pedagogiky a vedoucího Ústavu pedagogických věd z Filozofické fakulty Masarykovy univerzity v Brně. Milý Glynne, nyní už je to na vás.
Vážené kolegyně, vážení kolegové, dobrý den. Děkuji. I will present a very short presentation, and then my colleague Maria Sabo will present hers. But in between, I will present a set of questions which I was asked to put to the other panelists. So this is a very short history of competencies in relation to effective leadership and management, from a very long history, because competencies go back hundreds of years to the trades and guilds, for the goldsmiths, the engineers, from apprentice to master craftsman. Competency has been in our system for a very long time, and in education for a very short time. We're catching up. And it's exactly 25 years ago, when I was in my second headship, I began a 2-year management course at a Manchester business school. I went to a business school because I wanted to learn what other businesses did and how to get the best practice from those other industries and apply them in the education world. And I'd already gained from reflecting on the 7 head teachers I'd worked with and for, and observed the behaviour of those. So some of my presentation necessarily includes those from the world of outside education. One of the ways in selecting head teachers was through what were called assessment centres. This is still practiced in some parts. And as far back as 1973, the writer Hook, he found that these were the key areas that the principals, and I'll use principals, I'll use head teachers, I may even use the term administrators and managers to mean exactly the same thing, because you as principals, directors, which is the best word because it means giving leadership, will be doing in your practice, in your daily practice, you are doing all those tasks as well as leading the learning. So in terms of 1973, just a decade or so ago, assessment centres, what we were looking for. And you'll see, you can read this in much more detail when it's on the website, so, because we are pressed for time. Again, moving on, just a year later, one of the best books on leadership, Stogdill's Research and a Handbook of Leadership. The second best book is Yuckel's book, Y-U-K-Y-Uckel. Read that if you have some time in between your administration and you're talking with teachers. Characteristics of organisational leaders. This was from the business world, and you can see there some of the most important elements. And I'm going to highlight one or two. Persistence in the pursuit of goals. And really, that's absolutely essential in all areas, that determination. But also, I want to say, initiative. Not waiting to be told what to do, but getting on and doing it. Along with the other areas there. Notice there is a high tolerance of stress. Practically that means distress, but you're all doing that very well this morning. I think the coffee helps. Again, from Stogdill's research, we were into the trait theory, the skills theory, and these were many of the skills and traits that were identified from observation of head teachers, principals, school leaders. And this is centred also around, and you find it in McClelland's work, where he said that people have three main needs. The need for power, and you're all here, okay, trying to influence what goes on, that's power. The need to achieve, and the need for affiliation. And with my experience with head teachers and head teacher groups, I find the affiliation they get is from other head teachers. It is now also within the community and within their teaching bodies. Again, stress is, and its tolerance is there. One of the books that brought two things together, the competence and the management, was Boyartz's super book, The Competent Manager. And this was both from the private sector and the public sector. So I think this has a great deal to tell us. It's a nice mélange, or a nice mix of the important elements that are seen. And notice number 6 there. He didn't number them, I did for easier identification. I find structuring is much simpler with numbers. Conceptualization, having the big picture. If you haven't got the big picture for your school, I don't know what you're doing there. Okay, having that ability to use the power that exists within groups, managing that, and again the proactivity, not waiting to be told what to do, not waiting for a diktat from the ministry, getting on and doing it that's the best for your community. Now, one writer who was Bob Garrett, who wrote about the learning organisation before Peter Senge. Peter Senge has made a lot of money out of that, but Bob Garrett wrote about it first. He identified the 10 necessary characteristics of an effective director, both in the business world, outside education, and in the world of education business. And importantly, recognising, concentrating on managing boundaries, knowing what's my job, knowing what other people's job is. Having an integrated overview, back to the Gestalt, and learning how to delegate, but not just delegating or dumping, right? Decentralisation is a great way of dumping things on other people. It's not particularly efficient in terms of economy of scale, but it's seen to be politically very sensible. Decentralisation gives you a sense of independence, but actually there's not much there because the money is directed to you and you have to spend it. Not always how you want. But an integrated overview, there's a gestalt there, how the business is performing and how to get the best for it. Learning to delegate, not dumping, and coaching the staff. Don't just give them the job to do. Support them, enable them, if necessary, coach them how to do it. And if you haven't got the skills how to do it, buy it in. NIDV can supply this. Right. I will learn to give them cover. That actually is quite important, time for reflection. And actually, if they have a job to do, sometimes you need to build in that, plan for it. And it is possible within your budgets, I know because I've seen them, how to manage this money effectively to give some cover at some time when it's needed for the benefit of the total organisation. And become more politically astute. I don't have to say anything in the Czech Republic. You've just gone through an election about political astuteness. Okay. exercising both the rights and duties of the role, becoming competent at those, and we saw earlier in the presentation the competencies needed, balancing importantly between achieving and nurturing. Absolutely important. We can give the coaching time, but giving coaching time takes time. Sometimes we have to say, this is what we do, and this is how we're going to do it. It's nice to talk. I've learned while being in the Czech Republic, people in the Czech Republic like to talk. I think that's great. It doesn't get a lot done, always. And the recognition also that the school, our organisation, is part of a local, national, and I would say international society now. We are not talking just about our immediate community. We're not just talking about our region. We're not just talking about the Czech Republic. We're actually talking about competition within the global economy. And head teachers have been recognised, as we saw earlier, as being vitally important in driving that forward. Again, reinforcing again, Garrett says, learning to design the future rather than just reacting to it, not waiting to be told, getting on with it and doing it. And one of the things I say, I've had complaints from teachers and head teachers say, well, we can't get the right textbooks. I was in Kosovo recently and they said, we can't get the right textbooks. I said, what are you doing about it? And one said, I'm actually writing it so that we've got accurate information now. And the ministry have agreed that what I'm presenting is the best. So, looking to provide the best. If it's not there, do it. Don't wait, do it. In the 1990s, and this relates directly to the competencies that were being explored at the time, there are a number of things that I explored. One of the, I'll go through what the meaning is at the top. The NASSP, some of you will know, is the National Association for Secondary School Principals in North America. There is also a National Association for Elementary School Principals. And these set up a series of competencies very early in the 1980s. The second is a regional group where I was working. The third, MCI, is a management charter initiative which started in the 1990s, and this was based around what is effective business competencies for all businesses. And the fourth was what we had before the National College for Leadership, as it's now called. It's not just school leadership in England. The National Education Assessment Centre. One of the things I sought to do in this comparative table was to go through and see what was common to all. One of the things I noted, and you can look at this in more detail from the site, is that as far as stress tolerance was there, it was in 3 out of the 4. The business of values was there, and judgment. But the one thing that was not there in the National Educational Assessment Centre was political astuteness, which surprised me. It's now there in the National College for School Leaders agenda. So what is competence then? And this is the OECD definition. And I want to reinforce what our colleague from Belgium said. A competence is more than just knowledge and skills. It's meeting complex demands, drawing on and mobilizing, importantly, psychosocial resources. That means people. And including skills and attitude. But it is in a particular context. All we know about leadership is that it is context specific. Every piece of research that's done on leadership demonstrates that. So, from the Department for Education and Skills, its name has changed again because we've had an election. In the national standards for head teachers, which we moved from competencies to standards, this is what it says effective head teachers are. They're responsive to the context of the school, and they maintain that gestalt, the overview, integrating their work into the coherent whole of the other activities of the players in the school and the community. This is, I could have talked for 15 minutes just on this one slide at all. It's by Professor Richman in Germany, and you'll see at the centre is vision. But one of the things I wanted to highlight, and I'm told that this works, maybe, yeah, is the importance of monitoring. It was referred to earlier, but I want to reinforce monitoring and review. Every teacher in the UK, I can only talk about England because we are a sort of disunited kingdom with a Scottish Parliament, a Welsh Assembly. But in the UK, every teacher has an annual review with either the head teacher or their senior manager. We have a different hierarchy, but it's vitally important for the sort of feedback we heard about earlier. And every head teacher has an annual review with a colleague from a similar environment, but also from within their governing body, their school council. Some of the other elements that are here on this slide are emphasising some of the issues that are brought out by people like Tom Peters, like walking the talk. Don't tell people to do something if you're not prepared to do it. Don't say, we want nobody to shout at the children if you shout at children. It's just a very simple example. And if the rule in your school is don't run in the corridor, don't run in the corridor. But have a look at this in your own time. It's a really good model. And this is from a man from an engineering background. Some of the research identified competencies involved in early headship, and I think quite clearly you will recognise all of these from your memory and when you became a head or as you're becoming a head. I would guess you know which of these are problematic for newly appointed heads. And I'll just, so we don't play the game of what's in my head, I'll tell you. Number one, legal issues. Number two, responsibility awareness. And number three, it isn't self-control, but problem solving. But all of those were found to be important in early headship. Also, one of the best models that I've seen is where every head teacher has a mentor, not just for a year, not just for 1 year as we saw earlier, but longer. Mentoring doesn't stop. You do not become better just after 1 year. All the research says that you can be better after between the 3rd and 7th year of tenure, not after the first year. You've improved, but you're not brilliant yet. There are still things to learn. Once you stop learning, you should resign. So there are 6 non-hierarchical areas that the standards deal with. You can see them, they're very simple. Headship is very simple. That's all you have to do. And it's put together in a beautiful diagram, which is problematic at a distance, but this was done by, dare I say it, PricewaterhouseCoopers, which is a consultancy. They charge the UK government a lot of money for this, but it's a nice diagram. And it puts together government policy and the head teacher's role. So have a look at it and see how it fits with the Czech domain. I know this is based on the outcomes for children particularly, but I wanted to just show you it's possible to do it on one side. There was talk earlier about delegation, and Hargreaves and Fink have put together this very nice developmental form of delegation. And I won't do more than just show that, but a couple of things. One from emergent distribution, learning to let go. All of us know, sitting here, we can do a better job more quickly than the time it takes to teach somebody else to do it. But it's not efficient in the long term. Learn to let go. Praise initiative. There are some very good teachers. There are some very good emerging leaders. And out of assertive distribution, I've got to look at this one. Keep your sense of humour. It's absolutely vital. So the core purpose of headship, according to the UK standards, is one side of A4. I worked for a boss once who said, I only want anything on one side of A4, one side of A4 paper. He said, if it's more complex than that, I don't want it. He said, keep it simple. And I learned from that I must be succinct, I must learn to synthesize, and I must learn to stick to the point. It's easy to be diverted. And in summary, it's just these 4 points. That lot of text before just says this. So, my thoughts were, how do we appoint such people? And this is some advice from one agency. It's a local authority which demonstrates the key areas. I've highlighted those: successful, pragmatic, reflective practitioner, rational, analytic, emotional, ethical competencies, evidence in behaviour and action, persuasive, vision, thinks strategically, co-constructs, doesn't do it all on their own, builds the vision together, implements the vision, relates positively and empathically. Empathy is a key competence, I think, and it's something that isn't always recognised. Act consistently. Clear values, again, that came from the earlier presentation, desire to provide the best possible learning environment for all pupils. I would say not for all pupils, I would say for all learners, for everyone in that organisation, including oneself. The best possible. And if you don't want the best possible, I think what you should do is think, oh, you may say, well, I haven't got the right team. A couple of weeks ago, there was an ice hockey tournament. I didn't take much notice because we don't play it very well in England. But there seemed to be a bit of interest in the Czech Republic, so I thought I'd better watch a little bit of this. And what I noticed was that they actually said, well, we haven't got the best players. And I thought, that's incredible, because they went on to beat Canada, which I thought, wow, Canada, I knew about Canada, I've been there, watched ice hockey, it's really exciting, they're really good. And it's Sweden. No, it's not possible. No, they've not got to the final, have they? And they beat? No. No, they couldn't possibly beat Russia. But they did, because there was belief. They believed in the possibility of doing it. It was belief, and that was created through self-belief driven by the coach. He didn't say, oh, I'm sorry, you're second best. He said, we can do it. You can do it. We together can win. And I'm really struck by that. And I think there's a message there. So don't complain about the best team. Make them the best team. To move on quite quickly. I thought the only possible applicant for the job of headship must be the sort of super person. Notice this is androgynous, i.e. it's neither male nor female. Okay? But then I read this. We have in England a committee for standards in public life. And these are the 7 principles. It says, basically, it says, don't give your siblings, spouse, partner jobs. Don't take money from firms for production of materials that you have. Don't do this, don't do that. Be open, be honest. Present good leadership with integrity. And I thought again about Superman, because he had Lois Lane, you know, and maybe it wasn't so selfless. And therefore, I thought I've got to revise my views on who should be the best applicants. I could only think of 2 people with some advice from a Czech colleague. Sparta Agnieszka and Sparty Václav, the only possible incumbents for the job. I want to finish with a brief snippet from a poem, which is one of my favourites about education. It's a favourite about communities. This is from Oliver Goldsmith, an Irishman, who wrote about a deserted village. The village has gone. Like some of the villages in the Czech Republic now, they're disappearing. Nobody lives there, almost. And they're surprised by the ability of this man, because he could do all sorts of things. He could do mathematics, he could read foreign languages, he could map his way around the world. And they said, and still they gazed, the people gazed, and still the wonder grew that one small head could carry all he knew, or she knew. I put in the she. And what I'd say to you is, we don't have to be just one small head carrying all that now. We can think about how we best distribute the roles, responsibilities, and make that team as good as the Czech ice hockey team. Thank you. Děkuji.